So today's topic of conversation, we are talking about the soon-to-be released game Redfall.
And I'm sure you've heard plenty about Redfall already, but I'll catch you up to speed right here in the beginning of the video, because I just have a gut feeling you'd rather listen to me than him. Redfall is the next upcoming Xbox console exclusive thing. First-person shooter, shooting a bunch of vampires. It's basically every squad-based, horde-based shooter ever made, but with kind of a unique paint job. And also it's 30 FPS on both the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. Because it's 2023, but Bethesda wants us to feel like we're still in the 2010s, which I guess would explain this game's game design as well.
Which was, I believe, developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda, coming out on May 2nd.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Arcane should not have their name attached to something like this. Like, seriously, the people who made Dishonored and Deathloop are making this? And I don't even care if you don't like Dishonored or Deathloop. Like, how do you go from games with unique concepts and cool first-person shooting mechanics and then just go to this? Like, it doesn't look terrible. It looks fine. But, really? That's the best you got, Arcane? Really? Bethesda? Microsoft? This is it?
Now, there's been a bit of a backlash in the gaming community because recently, just a few days ago, Arcane and Bethesda announced that Redfall will be releasing at a capped 30 FPS. Yes, you heard that here. 30 frames per second.
And this was an absolutely fantastic ratio, by the way. I appreciate when the internet comes together and unifies over something, even if it's something really stupid like this.
And there's been a bit of a backlash in the gaming community. So I wanted to just sort of rant about this a little bit. So, what's the big deal? A game being released at 30 FPS.
Well, the big deal, I shouldn't have to explain this, but the big deal is the fact that 30 FPS was the standard back in the 6th console generation, and then also the 7th console generation. And even though the 8th console generation started to get more 60 FPS games, it was still primarily a 30 FPS generation, unless you got one of the upgraded consoles. The notion with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X was that we were leaving 30 FPS behind, and, Microsoft themselves were promoting their new machine as a 60 FPS standard machine. We were playing HD games at 30 FPS back on the Xbox 360, which is a console that launched in, 2005, 2006? There's no reason that almost 20 years later we should still be getting first-party games capped at 30 FPS. Otherwise, what's the point of buying new consoles? The backlash for this game's 30 FPS frame rate cap was partially because it really just highlighted how much of a lie 60 FPS was for this new console generation, but it was also a slap in the face to anyone who bought the new hardware with the hopes of 60 FPS being the standard, like we were told it would be.
Back in the day, back in like the PS3 days, Xbox 360 days, you were lucky if a game ran at 30 FPS. Most of those games on those particular consoles, the frame rate absolutely dogged. It was like 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. Not always, but like some games with some serious frame rate pacing issues, especially on the PS3.
Yes, back in the 7th console generation, which was the Xbox 360 and the PS3. Reminder that we're in the 9th console gen right now. The 9th generation. So you starting your rant about a 9th generation game by going back to the 7th generation, not a fantastic look. We're starting off a little rough here. But yes, you are correct. 7th generation games generally targeted 30 FPS, and a lot of them struggled to hit it. Ironically, a lot of 8th generation games also targeted 30 FPS and struggled to hit it, which would really make you think that by the 9th generation, we would have figured this out by now. Especially since digital games are $70 now, for really no reason.
However, if you can recall back to those days, back to those times, you guys weren't complaining about that whatsoever. Barely.
Whatsoever, barely. So were we complaining or were we not? Yeah, 30 frames per second for HD games was the standard almost 2 decades ago. So what's the excuse for now?
You guys were not complaining about it. You guys didn't complain about, the frames per second on PS2. You didn't complain about it on the original Xbox. You didn't complain about it on the Dreamcast. You just keep going back and back and back and back and back.
You seem to be under the impression that the older the argument is, the more validity it holds. which is ridiculously wrong. No one complained about the special effects in the original Star Wars. Does that mean they hold up today by modern standards? Of course not. What is this argument?
Now we have these modern consoles, which have an option in most games for performance mode where you can run it at 60 FPS.
So by your own admission, Redfall is falling behind the standards.
And usually you've got a quality mode, which will run the game at 30 FPS. However, you're getting 4K textures, you might be getting some ray tracing effects, etc., etc., etc.
So, like how the Xbox One X was? Like, yeah, some games on the Series X have dodgy-ass ray tracing sometimes, but other than that, like, what did you pay for? The resolution and frame rates on these new games on the new console are still at the same standards that the last Xbox console was on. Genuinely, what did you pay for? You bought an entirely new machine, and you are not getting any kind of performance enhancement over the last one for it. So why did they sell you a new machine? That is the controversy.
So you gamers have been absolutely spoiled, because what happens is when you play a lot of these games, and I've talked about it a bit on this channel, when you're playing a game at 30 FPS and then you flip on performance mode and you see how much smoother it is at 60 FPS, in my eyes, I find it hard to go back to 30 FPS. I find it really hard to do that.
Okay, so you agree that 60 FPS makes the game better. And since 60 FPS has been around for quite some time, and these are allegedly much more powerful machines than the last set of hardware, why can't we get that now?
Even if the graphical fidelity has been somewhat limited on performance mode, I'll take performance mode any day of the week.
And I'm the same way. A lot of people are the same way. I'll happily take slightly nerfed graphics if it means the experience is smoother, especially in a first-person shooter. Like, playing a first-person shooter below 60 frames per second? Absolutely not. Really, playing any fast-paced game under 60 frames per second? Absolutely not. I've been playing Force Unleashed again. God damn, that game is good. Really, really, really good. And I really hate how jank the PC port is. Force Unleashed came out at 2008. And honestly, with the amount of stuff going on in this game, like with the amount of fucking physics objects and the amount of control you have over this game, I'm amazed it runs at 30 FPS in the first place, given 2008 console game standards. The point I'm getting at is I'm really not going to lose sleep over Force Unleashed running at 30 FPS. Like, I wish it wasn't the case. I wish it was running at higher than 30 FPS, but also 2008 game, not going to lose sleep over it. And I'm laying all this out now because it's going to be relevant in a minute or two. So just keep that Force Unleashed tangent in your brain for a couple minutes.
So the issue with that is, if you didn't have the option for performance mode, it may not be as apparent. You got to remember, a lot of us played these older games on the Xbox One, PS4. Again, played a lot of these games on the Xbox 360 at 30 FPS, and we didn't even think about it.
Yeah, we did. In fact, Force Unleashed is one of those games. I remember playing this game when I was younger and just thinking to myself, wow, this game would be so much more fun if it wasn't so sluggish. And why was it sluggish? Because it was capped at 30 frames per second. And as soon as I edit this video, I'm going to look into the mods to make this game 60 FPS or higher, because I might have to tap out of this one if I can't get over 30. A fast-paced action game is objectively hindered by 30 frames per second. It is less responsive, it is less smooth, obviously, and it hinders your experience in action. And I can distinctly remember plenty of games back in the 360 era that I wish played smoother. Like yeah, I wasn't out picketing because it wasn't 60 frames per second, because at that point, you know, if we were console gamers, that's all we had. Games like the original Gears of War, games like Halo Reach, stuff that, you know, definitely would have benefited from a higher frame rate, but we didn't really have the option for that. You know, the best we knew on the console was 30 frames per second for big games like that. At least for the most part. I know there were some notable exceptions. I know there were a decent amount of 60 FPS games on the 7th generation of consoles, but the point I'm making is that if you were playing an HD game on the Xbox 360 or the PS3, the expectation was 30 frames per second. And we were generally okay with that because games looked better than they ever had at that point, you know, for console games. But I feel like you get the point I'm trying to make. 30 frames per second is something we should have left behind a long time ago because it objectively hurts every game that it is in. And since the Xbox Series consoles and the PS5, since they're allegedly capable of much better performance and 60 frames per second output, really, what is the issue with Redfall? I say it again, if we're maxing out the Series X at performance that you got on the One X, Why did Microsoft sell you the Series X in the first place?
Because your eyes are trained to adjust to the 30 FPS.
What?
It's only once you jump from 30 FPS to 60 in real time and jump back to 30 that you see how jarring it is.
I mean, sure, if you go from 30 to 60, then back to 30, it will be jarring. But that doesn't mean staying at 30 forever doesn't get tiresome. You're telling me that if you played games at 30 FPS, you only ever played games at 30 FPS, you're telling me you never once thought to yourself, wow, this game would be so much more fun if there wasn't so much slug. You never thought that? Because I don't believe that. That's kind of the whole reason we went to 60 FPS in the first place. If the world at large was completely satisfied with 30 FPS forever, why did we leave 30 FPS behind, or allegedly leave 30 FPS behind? These companies wouldn't have been able to successfully sell you something if it wasn't a thing that you wanted.
So, a lot of the gamers out there, now this is, again, very niche. This isn't the rest of the gamers out there in the world that don't watch YouTube.
You keep referring to the gamers in third person, like the gamers. Oh, the gamers. Are you not a gamer?
This is just a small group of YouTubers and social media influencers and people in the retro community that are making a big deal about this when it's actually much ado about nothing.
Well, yeah, if you're not on social media, you wouldn't have heard about the 30 FPS cap. So naturally, you wouldn't be saying anything about it on social media. You fucking dunce.
If anything, Arcane Studios should be commended for deciding to release this game at a capped 30 FPS.
Yes, these companies should be commended for selling you something that is running at standards that we were supposed to leave behind years ago, and that were left behind years ago on the PC, but that's a different topic. Microsoft sold you a machine with a 60 FPS standard, and now they're publishing a game running at half of that. This should not be commended. This should be criticized and mocked and chased out of the industry with the large broom. And if you can't understand why, I really don't know what to tell you at this point, because I don't want to keep repeating myself. Because my audience is a lot smarter than you, and I don't want to waste their time.
You know, if they need a little bit more time to make sure that this game runs appropriately at 60 FPS, so be it. They've already announced that the game will run at 60 FPS at some point in the near future. Big freaking deal. I don't know why people are crying about this.
I actually made a comment about this on a previous video about the topic. Redfall is not the kind of game that's going to sell fucking gangbusters over a long period of time. This is a game that's likely going to sell in its launch week, or maybe its launch couple weeks, and then it'll be out of the news. Physical copies will start going down in price pretty quickly. Digital copies will start going down in price pretty quickly. This is not going to be an ongoing, like, long-lasting game. And if that's the case, why would they patch in 60 FPS post-launch? Like, really? What incentive do they have to do that? Like, really, if this is a game that's not going to have an ongoing, sales presence, really, what incentive do they have to do the patch at all? I'm not saying they're never going to do the 60 FPS patch. I'm not saying they're lying about that. For all we know, the 60 FPS patch could come pretty soon after release. But the point I'm making is really, what incentive do they have, like, at all? They're not going to delay the game again, and this game is not going to be something like Skyrim or Doom or, like, other story-based games that continue to sell really well after their release window. So why would they have any hustle with the 60 FPS patch?
A lot of you guys really need to go outside and touch grass, literally. You need to walk outside, go outside, spend the day outside, and stop spending so much time on social media. It's ridiculous.
When in doubt, fling random accusations at people who disagree with you. That's a great way to do this. That's a fantastic way to YouTube. Nice ratio, by the way. Can't imagine why people don't like this video.
A lot of you guys that are complaining about this are, the same people that are probably not even interested in this game. Now, the game looks incredible.
Yeah, okay, buddy.
It may even be a day one purchase for me. I don't know yet. It looks really good.
Well, by the standards that you're laying out, you better buy this day one, or else you're a huge hypocrite. Because you just said that the people talking about this and the people upset about this are the people who aren't interested in the game. So if you're coming up to bat for this game, you fucking better be interested in it, or else you just destroyed your own argument. If you're not interested in the game, but you're coming up to its defense, why can't we criticize the game that we're not interested in buying? Also, if people are upset about the game's performance, you would think at least a chunk of them are upset about the performance because they were planning on buying the game. Like, how are you this much of a dick to people you have no interest in even listening to?
And again, I've never had a problem playing a game at 30 FPS. A lot of the first-person shooters back in the day were capped at 30 FPS, okay?
Yeah, because 30 FPS was the best we could do on the Xbox 360 a lot of the time. Notice how you said first-person shooters back in the day. If we're still judging games based on performance standards from back in the day, why did you buy a new console? Why did they sell you a new console if they're not going to improve their performance?
It doesn't mean the game's unplayable. Oh, God, you guys, it's just like you're out to lunch. Seriously, you're out to lunch.
Yeah, guys, you're out to lunch. God, guys. I mean, this new game runs at 12 FPS. It's not unplayable. Just be grateful, you doofus. Yeah, it runs like a game from 2017, but if you just paid the $70, you could still basically play it.
It's funny. We have all this stuff going on in the world. You know, the economy's gone to shit. There's a war going on. There's people homeless, starving in the streets. There's a lot of people out there that have real world situations going on. Okay? Whereas if you told them about your little problem about Redfall running at 30 FPS, okay? If that was only their only problem that they had to deal with, they would be taking that in a heartbeat over what they're dealing with. But you guys that are living with your first world problems...
You realize that if you're going to dismiss people who disagree with you in this fucking dishonest and stupid of a way, you now cannot argue about anything on your channel. Because the second you say you don't like anything, I'm going to be right up in your comment section saying, hey, bro, you know, there's a homeless guy down the street, so you better shut the fuck up.
And you're sitting there crying about a game that you're probably not even interested in playing.
You said like a minute ago that this game might be a day one purchase, so you're not even sure if you're interested in it. So who the fuck are you?
Because the game's capped at 30 FPS and you're jumping on a social media bandwagon. Oh, that Arcane Studios, how dare they not give me my 60 FPS?
I mean, it's less how dare Arcane Studios do this and more so what the fuck Microsoft, how did you allow this?
You guys just need to pump the brakes just a little bit, okay? Is the game unplayable at 30 FPS? No.
No, it's not literally unplayable. It's just we really don't want to play it. How dare our standards go up after 20 years of technological improvements?
Dreamcast guy acts like it's a slideshow at 30 FPS. Okay, sure, Dreamcast guy. Sure. No, the game will be surfaceable at 30 FPS.
It'll be surfaceable.
And if you're not happy with 30 FPS, hey, you can wait until the 60 FPS patch is released, or you can play it on PC. It's not really a big deal.
It is a big deal if you bought an Xbox Series console with the expectation of games running at 60 frames per second, because this game is evidence that that was a lie. How many times does this have to be drilled into your head? How can you get on people's cases for going, oh, it's a social media bandwagon? You don't even listen to the social media bandwagon. You're just dismissing the social media bandwagon right out of the gate. Like, what?
The Xbox ecosystem, Xbox, is not just the console anymore, okay? Xbox, the brand, is the console and the PC.
The PC is not part of the Xbox brand. Do not equate those two things. Xbox has a presence on the PC, yeah. But Xbox brand, the PC is not part of the Xbox brand. Don't do that. Don't equate those things.
So if you want to play it at 60 FPS, go play it on the PC, okay?
Yeah, man, you bought a $500 piece of hardware to play 60 FPS games. But if you want to play 60 FPS games, go buy another piece of hardware. Great argument.
Otherwise, wait a couple of weeks and the patch will be released.
Where are you getting a couple weeks from? Wait a couple weeks for the 60 FPS patch. Where are you getting that from? That's not confirmed. No one has said that. You just pulled that out of your ass.
You guys are crying about nothing. The game is going to run buttery smooth at 30 FPS, okay?
Buttery smooth 30 FPS is an oxymoron.
That's the key thing. They want to get the game out the door, make sure that it's running appropriately, okay?
No, they just want to get it out the door.
They've already delayed this game once or twice before, okay?
So what was the problem with another delay?
Arcane can't delay this game again.
Why not? Microsoft has no problem delaying every other first-party game they're working on.
Okay, you guys don't seem to understand. There's a lot of shareholders at play, people that own stocks in the company that are expecting a solid Q2 result, okay? And they can't afford to delay this game. If the game is ready to rock at 30 FPS, okay, and everything else is ready to go, we'll release the game at 30 FPS on the Xbox, and then at a later date drop the 60 FPS mode, okay?
You say that this is for like a solid Q2. The sales projections for this game cannot be that high. There is very little hype for this game. I just don't agree with the idea that Redfall's sales projections are high enough to justify not delaying it and getting better performance so you don't cause a giant controversy with every new announcement that you make about the game. That just cannot be worth it.
There's no point releasing the game at 30 FPS and 60 FPS if there's issues with the 60 FPS mode in particular.
Right, so delay it, because as it stands, you're launching a game below modern standards, and that's a worse look than delaying it and getting it up to date.
Because that's just going to draw even more negativity. But you guys don't seem to want to look at it like that. You guys just want to, just for the sake of clicks, you want to go out there and complain and cry about how it's not running at 60 FPS.
That's right. Everyone upset about the game running at 30 FPS is only doing it for clicks. You fucking clown.
Guys, think about it. Think about it from a 360-degree perspective, okay?
Bro, you're at like 8 degrees tops right now.
The game is ready to rock at 30 FPS. Just let Arcane release the game like that, okay? And if you don't want to enjoy the game, don't play it. If it's on Game Pass, you've got an option. Again, you can go on PC and play it.
Yes, see my previous point about not using the piece of hardware you bought for 60 FPS, but using a different piece of... You know what? I'm done with this one. There's another like minute left of this video, and I'm just done. I don't care. You're just kind of a dick, and I just don't care anymore. Redfall running at 30 FPS is a fucking scam. Console gaming today is also a fucking scam. So just don't. Toodles.